How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez and Dave Meltzer here, Wrestling Observer Radio, June 21, 2018, figure4online.com/wrestlingobserver.com. Very happy today to be joined by Kenny Omega, one of only 2 men in history who happened at the exact same time to get a 7-star rating in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Kenny Omega joining us here today. Kenny, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me again, guys.
I hear that Matt's questioning this 7-star scale. Is that right?
It was Nick.
Was it Nick?
And it was more as a joke, though.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of people are questioning it. What can you do?
You're not questioning it, I presume.
No. No. Some people do ask me what I think of it, and I mean, there's only one way to answer it. I mean, Dave unbiasedly rates everything out of his honest opinion, and if he thought it was honestly 7 stars, then that's his opinion, and I'm very proud that is his opinion, because he's a very highly respected wrestling critic and someone very knowledgeable about all types of wrestling all over the world. So, hey man, if he thought so, I'm very happy. If someone thought the match was 16 stars, 70 stars, I'm happy about that too. If he thought it was 1, great. You know, it's I don't know why there's such a dispute over it, but what can you do? That's the world.
Well, hey, the obvious question then is, in your opinion, having wrestled Okada several times now, was this your favorite match of the series?
Yes, it was. I don't feel like it is the match that I would show someone that if I was trying to introduce professional wrestling to them. If I were to introduce someone to myself versus Okada, I would either show them the G1 match, or I would show them the Tokyo Dome match. But I think for someone who's very familiar with wrestling and is already prepared themselves for a deep and intricate wrestling story, then I do believe the best of 3 falls match is the one that hits kind of all of the notes where they need to be hit.
Now, when obviously you knew you were going to do a match on that day, but as far as the stipulation goes, was that an idea from New Japan, or was that you two going, all right, we got to do another match, and what could we do that would be a challenge, but that we think that we could pull off and tell the story the best? Who came up with the idea for Best of 3 Falls?
So, yeah, I remember that Gato dropped the idea on me that we're going to have to go back to this match at Osaka Joe Hall. So I'm sorry, we got this really successful tag team thing going with Ibushi that we never knew was going to be successful, but, Osaka Joe, we got to sell it out. And that's just kind of a sure bet. So if you don't mind, would you do this match? And, who am I to say no? So I was like, yeah, we could do it. And that was one of the venues where there's just plenty of rooms and plenty of space. So I was kind of sitting just alone in that room for a while and thinking about, how am I going to make this match special, and how am I going to make this match stand out from the other matches, especially because it's Osaka Joe Hall, where I've kind of had a history of doing something very different than the norm. Last year we had the 60-minute draw. The year before that we had the first ever ladder match. I wanted to do something different, kind of in that same realm with Okada this time. And then it hit me, okay, we each have a win, we each have a loss, we have a draw. This is the only time where it makes the most sense to have a best out of 3 falls match. And I don't know the exact history, but I feel like that match was very rare in New Japan. And I'm all for showing, matches of all different varieties in New Japan, which is why I really wanted to introduce the latter one. So I came up with the idea with the best 2 out of 3 falls, and then when I asked Okada about it, how he felt about it, he was all for it, and he just didn't know how he would respond to the challenge of the best of 3 falls match, because he was going to originally have the mic first. So he came up with the idea to first say that it was going to be a no time limit match, because he didn't want that as an excuse as to why, he couldn't win, or I couldn't win, or vice versa. So that was Okada's sort of input, and then, my response to that was, no, we can make this more interesting. Let's do 2 out of 3 falls.
How, when you were putting the thing together, did you spend more time thinking about this match than any of your other matches? Because the one thing when the match was over, to me was that there was more depth to this match than among other things, than any match I'd ever seen. I felt there was more thought put into it. I mean, in little things, like the stuff that maybe you don't even see the first time, but you see it the second time. A lot of what I saw the first time as well was just like, wow. It's like that was the one take that I had among many while I'm watching the match. Is like there is, this was more of a mental match to me than a physical match, even though the physical was great.
Yeah, I was very sort of cognitive about having this be a match that, even if the live house had never seen any of our matches previous, that they're going to enjoy it. And if they'd never seen the best 2 out of 3 falls match before, that they're going to see this match and go, you know what, I like this idea, and I can't wait till we see another one. So I wanted first to have every fall look visibly different from one another. But I also wanted, as a whole, all 3 of those falls and the way we went about them to make sense. I tried to use, promos beforehand to kind of give people a peek into my psychology going into the match and sort of give red herrings as to, well, this first fall is really important to Kenny. He's going to pull out all the stops to get that first one. And I made sure that, in Okada's idea, was he really wanted to use like a quick pin, like a flash pin on the first fall. So that was sort of his input on the first fall because, he's all up for trying new things now. And I guess as a champion and always going on last, always defending the belt, this is really one of his only chances to win with a quick fall like that. So he was really chomping at the bit to get that in. I thought it was a great idea. And it totally lent itself to my idea of the game plan, whereas I'm pulling all the stops to get that first fall and then control the pace. And then out of nowhere, bam, I lose and everything shatters. My plan crumbles. I'm in panic mode and Okada's in complete control. And, I really wanted to tell that story and have that story evolve throughout. And then, of course, there was sort of Okada's pinch moment where I had defeated him in a strong manner in the second fall, and how realistically, after almost an hour, is this guy going to get up and fight back? So we put a lot of thought into it, and it was just like a lot of times when you're going over how you're going to perform in matches, you're kind of walking and talking and kind of running things over. This is like, we're just sitting and thinking, and that's kind of how it went about. And there's a lot of alone and me time, and then time together, and yeah, it was mentally draining. But to put together a story that you're proud of, and then not only that, but have sort of the stamina to do everything that you had thought of, and then see it come together physically as well and materialize. It's just one of the greatest feelings because that's like the runner's high sort of feeling once it's all said and done.
Now, when I saw the One-Winged Angel in the second fall, I thought it was brilliant because if you had not done the One-Winged Angel in the second fall, I feel like whether true or not, viewers would be thinking, well, Omega's got to win because we haven't seen the One-Winged Angel yet, and, obviously it's going to come in the third fall. So was that kind of a mindset going into the second? Because also by doing that in the second fall, Okada had not hit the Rainmaker, or he not pinned you with the Rainmaker. So then the idea going into the third was, man, Kenny hit his move, but Okada hasn't hit the Rainmaker, so there's a lot of doubt in people's minds about who's going to win. Yes,
that was intentional, and I also wanted to kind of, we're sort of dialing it back now where, not that this is like a terrible thing, but the Rainmakers, I felt like it needs to go back to being a little stronger. So we wanted to limit the amount of hits and kickouts and such like that, and make anytime it hits be a moment. And we saved the first hit of the Rainmaker for the third fall. And by the time we got to the third fall, I had already used the One-Winged Angel. Okada hits the Rainmaker. And that's where you see me hit a Desperation Styles Clash. I go for the Phoenix Splash, just things that, out of complete desperation, how is this match going to end? I really sort of wanted that frantic kind of pacing, and what are these guys going to have to do to each other to end this thing? Especially when after the second attempt as the Rainmaker, it hits, but we're just so worn out that we can't even do each other's finishers anymore. Yeah, I mean, it's all by design, and if people didn't pick up on it, that's cool. But if you did, like, that's what we tried. It's a story we tried to tell. So, yeah.
When you're done with a match like that, I mean, first of all, I mean, you could kind of tell from the reaction of the crowd and everything, and I'm sure people afterwards probably went right up to you and kind of told you, like, that was really fantastic and everything. But, like, what do you have a feeling of, like, is it, I mean, what's the feeling afterwards? Is it a high? Is it a low? Is it like, I accomplished my dream? Or is it just like, I'm hurting and I gave so much to this match? I mean, what type of, what are the different reactions that you have emotionally when there's a match that you peaked so strongly for?
Yeah. Usually after a match like that, I come back and I'm sort of in almost a euphoric state where I think nothing but positive thoughts. I'm just happy that everything went the way that I mostly pictured. And, especially if both guys are walking from it and are able to talk and there seems to be no other complications. It was like that for... The only match that was a little different was Dominion, because by the end of that 60-minute draw, I think it was just because of the gear I was wearing, but it really made me feel like I was actually overheating. So I was feeling fine physically, but I just needed to, like, cool off.
Are you one of those people, I mean, you mentioned always wanting to try and think positive thoughts about a match, but every wrestler is different. Some guys are like, I can't watch my matches. Like, I absolutely cannot watch them. I hate watching myself. Other people watch every single match and they, like, dissect everything that they did, whether positive or negative. Mm-hmm. How are you as a wrestler? Do you enjoy watching your matches? I mean, are you very critical of yourself? Do you try not to be like that?
I try. I mean, when I watch back my stuff, I am very critical of in between small little things that most people don't pick up on. Like, I know there are times in a match when I see myself clearly saving energy, so I'm throwing, like, fluff forearms or whatever. And I hate that. I hate when I see myself doing that. Or if I'm not, running the ropes in the right way, or if it didn't look like I really wanted a pin, or if I didn't kick out strong enough. Things like that really bother me. But most of the times, spots, even if there's like a botch or a miscue, like, those things happen all the time. And I mean, in life and in like fighting, you know what I mean? A guy can go for a head kick and whatever, slip and land in his butt. Like, it just happens. Those things don't bother me so much. It's just the in-between stuff that I get really critical of, and I always want to go the extra measure to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I want to switch subjects just real quick because I know you had passed with him, and Leon White just passed away yesterday. Actually, it was Monday, but we got the news yesterday morning. Can you talk a little bit about your interactions with him and everything? Yeah,
I mean, I was able to actually meet Vader in 2009. And I had went to DDT Professional Wrestling for the first time in 2008. And I mean, I guess I can say it now. I wasn't there with an actual valid work visa. So for my first tour in Japan, I was a visitor. And if it wasn't for Vader in 2009 for his promotion that he was running there, I wouldn't have been able to work legally in Japan. So I'd worked I think 2 or 3 times for the promotion. And, he was always really pleasant, and he was always, he wanted to meet all the foreign talent right away, and he always had afterwards he would get his interpreter to meet all the Japanese guys. Super friendly. He would take a lot of time before the show, too, to help train his son. And, he was really pleasant, real cool guy, and always really looked like, the Vader that you'd see on TV. He never stopped kind of being Big Van Vader.
The upcoming G1, obviously there's always pressure on you, and more so than ever now in all of your matches, the IWGP champion. But you're in the G1, you have a match scheduled with Ibushi. What are your thoughts on all of this? I mean, is there a lot of pressure on you, or you do not try and look at it that way?
I look at it more as an opportunity because, last year I I went into that tournament holding the IWGP US Championship, but I still think that even then, there isn't a feeling of every match meaning something necessarily. Whereas as the IWGP champion, every match kind of feels like there's something more on the line than just the 2 points. So it's going to be a little bit of a different. I have to treat it a little differently than I did the past 2 years, where not only am I trying to win the G1, but I'm also trying to emerge from this thing as a guy that has no one that can rightfully challenge. So every match essentially is kind of a non-title number one contenders match. And, that's why I really respect Okada's G1 last year. I was kind of shocked how, amongst the domestic opinion, even though Naito's run was great and great culmination in the finals, I thought Okada was the one that busted his ass the most in that tournament. And I don't know, I'm just going to try my best to have something similar where every match feels like there's more than just 2 points on the line.
One thing that I noticed in the match and everything like that is in the last match is and then you used it as part of your story for the match as well, is that you were going to come in and train the hardest that you've ever trained. How is training for this match and then getting ready for G1, which is instead of peaking for a night, although I guess at the end you do peak for that final or the last couple of days, but essentially this is something where you have to come in and peak for a month.
Right. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, regardless of how well you're able to train before the G1, generally speaking, by the end of the G1, you're able to kind of create your own rhythm. And even though you may be broken down and beaten up, cardiovascularly, you're able to kind of, without even thinking about it, pace yourself more properly than you could in the opening match. And it's like that with the Best of Super Junior, too, where even though you can't really train at a gym the way you normally would be able to with a grilling schedule like that, you're getting into better ring shape as the tournament progresses. So, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. There's a lot to do before doing the G1. I've got to do the Daytona Beach show, just a ton of media. There's a lot of stuff I have to do in the video game realm outside of the show itself. But, all I can do is do what I can and try to combat the things that, I have a little bit of control over, like my condition throughout, jet lag and what have you, and my dieting and all that. It's just really tough when you're constantly on planes. But, for the G1, you can always count on your cardio being very good by the end of it. So it's just as best as you can staying injury-free and pacing yourself that way. Even mentally as well, pacing yourself. You don't want to overthink any of the matches and be completely drained for the next one.
Obviously, in pro wrestling, unlike mixed martial arts, I mean, you and your opponent can pace yourself, and it's not like you obviously aren't in bad shape. The question is, what sort of training, added training, did you do for the Best of Three Falls match? I mean, was it a situation where I actually am training harder than I've ever trained in my life, or I mean, obviously that's the storyline, but I mean,
but you got in noticeably different shape. I mean,
sure.
which I actually thought was, added to the story in a small way, in the sense that when you're right there, when the thing starts, you just go, hey, he put in a different amount of work because he reshaped his body in a different way. And I think that was the beginning of the story in that match.
Yeah, how much of it is training and how much of it is pacing in a match like that?
I mean, the like David said, I mean, that was the Rocky fan in me. I always remember one of the most sort of lasting moments for me as a child when I watched Rocky IV was after his training up in the mountains in Russia, when he takes off his robe or whatever. He's in noticeably the best shape of his life. And you know that you're in for a fight at that point, even though the opponent is supposed to be this undefeatable super soldier. And in a way, you could really kind of relate Okada to being like a Drago kind of character. But I definitely did increase my training, and I tried to I tried to design it whereas not only it was going to, so that I would not only look a certain way aesthetically, but that it was for the purpose of being able to go more than 60 minutes. So, I would run at a considerable high pace to the gym every day from where I live in Japan. Then I would do 45 minutes right away on a cross trainer at. I would start, just kind of keep it low, but then eventually I would raise the inclination on the incline on the machine, and then add more tension to it so that it's really like you're stepping into every moment, every motion. And then I would do my weights at that point. And then we have kind of like the ski machine or whatever. It's sort of like ropes or whatever. And I would burn out by doing just quick 6 sets of 500-meter sprints. And I really think that sort of in the way that a pro wrestling match flows, there's going to be moments where there's going to be a sprint, and there's going to be moments where things kind of calm down for a bit. So I thought it was important to sort of explore sort of both sides of those cardio, where you can maintain a certain speed for a certain amount of time, but also that you have the ability to have explosive movements for a short period of time as well on a moment's notice. But then, of course, you can't just do that and burn all your muscle away. You have to train as well and diet properly, too. So I don't think I cheated once. I don't think I had one cheat meal before that show, because I was really coming in heavy, after that match with Paige. Not that I was in bad shape. I just thought that it was okay to put on mask because I was going to be doing this tag team thing with Ibushi for a while. And then, no, you're not. You're doing a single. So it's like, oh, my God, I've got to do a complete 180. And I'm really glad I did in retrospect.
Has there ever been a match where, this would have been probably earlier in your career, where there's like a big match coming up, and so you just train and train and train and train and train and train, and by the time the match is over, you're sort of like, I did way too much. I didn't need to train that hard.
Oh, yeah. There are times when I train and I train and I train, and I diet, and I kind of take like a real bodybuilder's approach so that I shock everyone in my entrance. And, of course, I've never had a history of doing bodybuilding. I just kind of read what I can online or ask for advice from people that have entered competitions. And then, I see myself on video the next day, and it's just, it looks like it just kind of came out of a dryer. And not only that, but then you feel like garbage in the ring, too, because you overdid it.
Yeah.
That's happened so many times. So I really make sure not to sacrifice that, not to sacrifice your performance in the ring just for kind of a 30-second or 1-minute introduction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, when you mentioned
hard to balance it.
When you mentioned running to the gym,
yep.
How often do you get recognized on the street in Japan and in Winnipeg? Is it a regular thing? Is it never? Is it all the time?
So, yeah, my house is actually just outside of Winnipeg, so I'm about 7 minutes away in a very new area. And you can't go anywhere unless it's by car. So when I'm driving, of course I'm safe. If I go to a mall or anything like that, now I'm actually noticed. But before, up until maybe the first Tokyo Dome match with Okada, no one noticed me. I was just a dude. And now especially, if I'm in public, people do recognize me. It's kind of weird because I've never had it like that. And in Tokyo, I'm in a very quiet area as well. I purposefully put myself in a very quiet area. So sort of the path where I run to the gym, it takes about 15 minutes. But, it's around, middle schools and an elementary school. So there's just, a bunch of kids playing sports or whatever. And, some of them know who I am, and they'll say hi or whatever, but they're in class, so it doesn't really ever, it doesn't bother me, or it doesn't kind of affect the way I train. But if I do move into the city of Tokyo, it gets really hectic. And it got to a point where I can't ride public transport anymore. I can't ride the trains. It was getting to a point where if I do, and I exit at a station, I'll kind of feel the presence of people behind me, and I'll look, and there'll be 6 people, and I know it's not their stop, but they all want autographs and pictures, and that's fine. But a lot of the times, I'm just always late when I'm trying to get somewhere. That's just how I am. So then I become even more late. So I have to take a car or ride a taxi everywhere I go now. But it's not a bad thing, and I love seeing fans. It's just I'm not as punctual as I'd like to be.
when it comes to the wrestling business in the last couple of months, even I would say since New Japan first came to the United States, the All In show, it's a really interesting time in the business with all the political moves behind the scenes, with you guys with your being the Elite show, which is really it's opened a lot of eyes to a lot of different things that were possible that looked to be completely impossible if you go back 3 years. I mean, do you have any thoughts of where the business is going or where you would like to see the business go?
I mean, yeah, I would love to see. I mean, for me in Japan especially, I don't watch TV too much, but when I do, there's always just a ton of commercials. It's not so much like America. I mean, where a half-hour show will end up running 21 or 22 minutes. In Japan, it's like a half-hour show runs maybe 15 because of the amount of commercials that you have to see. And they use a lot of sports personalities. And most of the time, they are baseball players or figure skaters or golfers, but you never really see wrestlers in roles like that. And I just sort of feel like, wrestling now that things have kind of come full circle and it's kind of more popular again and it's kind of become more socially acceptable, we can kind of make that additional stride to kind of be put more in the public like that, in public media. So I would love to do more than just be a guy that wrestles in a ring. And, that's why I fought so hard for the E3 thing with the New Day. That's why when I had a chunk of time off, I did my best to find, other commercial work and stuff. So for the first time, I was able to do commercials in Japan and otherwise. I did kind of like a social media commercial as well for a fighting game called Street Fighter V. I did 4 commercials in 1 month, and before that, I'd done 0. So I'm always looking for things kind of outside the box and things that wrestlers aren't typically doing, just to kind of open the doors to what we're capable of and bring more eyes towards professional wrestling and the wrestlers.
The thing that you did with the New Day last week.
Yep.
How did that all come about?
Yeah. So huge credit to Xavier Woods, Austin Creed. We'd sort of exchanged direct messages or whatever for years, and we both had a love for video games. It's one of our favorite hobbies, and we just thought, wouldn't it be cool if? And we'd always sort of spitballed ideas in fantasy booking scenarios, and I remember that. I think it was 2016, I'd like to say, in the wintertime, I had taken some indie bookings around the East Coast area. And Xavier happened to be in the East Coast area, in the exact same city, and we had said, hey, let's get a drink, let's hang out. I'd never actually met the guy in person yet. And when we got to sitting down and kind of hanging out, he's like, hey, you know what, I've got this real, cool camera. What if we film some funny scenes together? And, by that point, Up, Down, Down thing was strictly a WWE program, so I couldn't be on his Up, Down, Down show, but, as an Instagram video or just kind of like a social media, Twitter thing, it was cool to do. So we came up with these little scenes, and we created a rivalry over video games. And from there, we had a clash at CEO, which is the company I'll be working with at Daytona Beach coming up, and that was 3 years ago. And then, or 2 years ago, sorry. And then, then next year after that, Xavier made time to come back out again to kind of continue the story. And it just sort of became this well-known thing amongst video gamers that we had this rivalry and that we were wrestlers from opposing companies. And so Capcom kind of reached out, and they had said, hey, what are the chances you guys might want to, continue a rivalry on one of the main stages at E3, and we were all for it. And seeing as how E3 is literally the biggest gaming convention in the world, and happens only once a year, we thought it was an opportunity to really show it to a bunch of new people by using the various streaming methods that E3 had access to, Capcom had access to, and even WWE had access to. And getting the permission to do that was, we weren't sure how it would go. But, New Japan was cool with it from the offset. WWE was also very cool with it. They were cool with it being New Day versus the Elite. Like, we weren't kind of protecting names or keeping it secret, which is really cool. And I believe even WWE went above and beyond and pushed the show even more, which I thought was awesome. And I love that they were behind it 100%. And I really think it was a step in a very positive direction.
Tell us about the Daytona show that you have upcoming.
you had told me that you have some interesting ideas for the show coming up on the 29th of June in Daytona Beach.
Yeah. My hope was for the wrestling fans that are coming there just to see the wrestling, if we were able to kind of show a side of the gaming world to them and open their eyes to how fun and how cool that could be, and also vice versa as well. There's a lot of people that are there just strictly to compete, or even just to play casual games. But hey, there's a wrestling ring, let's check it out. I'm hoping to have a show the caliber able to make new fans. And at the same time, I wanted to have the aesthetic of not only New Japan, but also the familiarity of how gaming events are streamed. So, we're actually going to be using professional competitive gaming commentary teams rather than professional wrestling. But they are fans. They're very, very knowledgeable about the wrestlers and the maneuvers and all that. The way it's going to be filmed is going to be filmed for... it's going to be used in the same... The cameras and all that, they're going to be used in the same manner that they would for, the biggest major events. So it's going to look really good. And it's going to look really good, but it's going to look different than how New Japan is normally filmed. But I think that with, the aprons and, the barricades and all that, and the video packages and everything, it'll still be familiar to the New Japan fans. It'll just be different. And, I'm really excited to have the type of talent that we have on board. Ibushi rarely makes it to the States, so I'm glad to have him. New Japan was able to clear both Naito and Hiromu for the match for us to work against, which is kind of rare because they're really protective over everyone being strong. I was able to get clearance to use Jeff Cobb, which I thought was real cool, and Dragon Lee as well, who is usually really booked up solid in Mexico, wanted to take the booking over something huge. So I just felt real fortunate that things came together the way they did. And also, I'm a huge fan of Michael Nakazawa. I think he's super entertaining. And even though New Japan wouldn't clear him to be on the main card, I do think it's awesome that he will be on the show, and the entire show, including the dark matches, will be streamed on Twitch for free, which it's never really done. Now there is wrestling available on Twitch, and that's kind of becoming a thing, but sort of a show of this magnitude in a New Japan wrestling show, presented in a new way, being free, I'm just really excited for.
Now, when you mentioned that you want to do a show that you hope will make new fans, as I guess a promoter in this case, a booker, I mean, what kind of things would you tell the talent about structuring their matches, or what kind of matches you want to see, or what they should do? How do you look at it in terms of trying to promote a product where people who aren't fans, when it's over, will decide that they want to watch pro wrestling?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Generally speaking, because I kind of have to do the same when I'm in Winnipeg every now and then. In Winnipeg, there isn't much of a scene here where I live, so when I do kind of show up to kind of lend a hand or whatever, first and foremost, aside from having just a great show from top to bottom, you want to be able to increase your numbers. You want to be able to fill, the small little venues as much as you can, in hopes that, eventually you can move out of the building and grow your product even more. And I think, like everyone that we're using, they have some sort of strength that can appeal to anyone, any wrestling fan, anyone that's even a fan of entertainment in general. And I think as long as you stick to your guns in that manner, kind of forget like, hey, we need to do the 4-step match here, guys. You just got to keep everything tight and make sure that everything has a purpose and makes sense, and the punchline to it all is going to lead to some sort of pop or some sort of moment where the fans are going to go, oh, that was cool, or maybe they're laughing, oh, that was funny, or oh my God, I hate this guy. I think it's easy, as long as you are willing to put the thought into it, where you can eliminate the lull moments and not just be in a ring and kill time because you're given 15. So I would rather keep everything much tighter and have everything very entertaining from start to finish rather than, just stick to your times and, let's sort of do the classic wrestling thing, which you see all the time kind of on indie, well, especially on where I'm from in the Canadian indies. It's just everyone's kind of following a formula.
You'd mentioned in an interview leading up to the big match that you had to accept, I believe you said, that Okada was the best wrestler in the world.
Yep.
Is that your true feeling?
Yes. No, absolutely. I actually, I really don't think I'm a good wrestler at all. I don't think I'm terrible. I think I can go along with things well. I'm half decent. But I think as a wrestler, I don't even know if I'm top 50, top 100. But I do feel like I'm the top performer. So, which is why, as a champion, my run has to look very different from Okada's, because I won't be able to match what he has done for that title in pure wrestling matches. So, as performances, I think I can do it. My strength, I think, is adding emotion and depth to my opponent's characters and telling different stories than what you're used to seeing. And my hope is that, not only will the fans of New Japan enjoy them, but, the fans around the world will enjoy them too, because I really want more people from outside of Japan to watch our product as well and enjoy it. But,
now,
yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
I guess just as so you believe you're the best performer, not the best wrestler. He is the best wrestler. Yep. What is it about him, about his matches, the way he structures the matches, the way he thinks, the kinds of matches he has with his opponents? What really, to you, sticks out about Okada as being the best in the world?
Because I think the way that Okada structures his matches when he's left on his own to structure them, I really do think that they're actually very basic, but he gets so much mileage out of things, out of so little. And he also has great timing, and he's able to position himself very well so that there's very little wasted movement. And the things that he does very cleanly and crisply. I can't remember someone who got so much out of a drop kick in the past 30 years.
Nobody.
The Rainmaker has been established as one of the most devastating finishes in a long time, and it's one of the most easiest moves to do. It's one of the easiest moves to take. It's an easy move to counter. And by simply throwing a Rainmaker and having your opponent duck it in a title match, you've already skipped a gear. That's already a gear-changing moment. Whereas I have to really kind of think outside the box and create all this mix and mishmash of emotion to get there. I'm not quite there in my wrestling ability to be able to do that, unfortunately. But I'm able to do that by manipulating emotions from the crowd and from my opponent. I'm not to say one style is better than another. It's just very different. And, I'm always learning, and hopefully, one day I'll be able to have something like that. But as of right now, I'm leaning heavily towards my ability of reinventing the wheel every time I face someone new in the ring.
When it comes to holding this championship, I mean, they had a 2-year story essentially from when you won G1 to this, it was almost a babyface story, and when it all culminated, I mean, the really interesting thing to me is at the first Tokyo Dome show, a lot of people wanted to see you win the championship, and then at Dominion, the same, and then at the Tokyo Dome, it felt to me like 80% of the people wanted Naito to win, and when so you're going through this thing, and now the story, in a sense, is told in the sense that he had this fantastic championship run, one of the greatest of this era, one of the greatest of all time, probably, and you know, he had that great match with Tanahashi leading up to your match, which you know, as far as like the storyline of a guy trying to break a record against the guy whose record he's trying to break, was just a tremendous story the way it was done. And they have such great chemistry with each other anyway. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when all is said and done, your match is over. I mean, it was one of the first things I thought of when your match was over was if you would have won, it would have been, I'm sure it would have been great if you would have won at Dominion or at the Tokyo Dome in some ways. But it wouldn't have been as great as it was. And if
I totally agree.
And if Naito would have won, it would have, you know, which would have been a good thing for Japan. But I don't know if it would have been as good worldwide. You wouldn't have had the Tanahashi match. You wouldn't have had this. So in the end, I guess, I mean, is this kind of like Gato's mindset or something? Because it with hindsight, I look at this and go like, this is actually brilliant the way it was done because of the patience involved in all situations.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure of the reasoning behind anything. I mean, one could only assume that this was probably a long-term plan since Dominion, maybe. I do know that there was a feeling, perhaps, that if Naito realized this dream, his Tokyo Dome boyhood dream of main eventing the Tokyo Dome after having it stolen from him, and not main eventing, I believe, the year after. I can't remember the story, but he won the G1, but then was voted out of the main event.
Right.
So for Naito to kind of, you know, against all odds, defeat this incredible champion at the Tokyo Dome main event, it would have been a great moment for the night, but people had sort of felt that as soon as Naito wins the belt, he cools off immediately, and that was the case the first time he'd won the belt from Okada. And I think that they had just felt that there's a better story to be told by having Okada break this all-time record. And I mean, I really don't know the direction of where Naito's headed or what the long-term plan is. I don't even know my long-term plan.
I was going to say, do you know anything that's going on? Is that the norm?
No. I really don't. They like I said, like they told me that I would be wrestling Okada again at Osaka Joe, kind of with not much time left to prepare for it, because I was already sort of purposely gaining weight to sort of be sort of like the team powerhouse and between myself and Ibushi. And you know, then they're like, no, we got to do this other match, and I'm like, oh boy, like this is, I guess, so long to tags. So that's why I did a complete 180 with my training, but. Yeah, I'm shocked. Like, I was shocked that, not shocked that Jericho won the IC title, because I thought that he really should, but I don't know. It's always, I just kind of keep my guard up, and I'm ready for everything. I don't know how the G1's going to go, and beyond. Because usually something from the G1 will emerge, and that decides another challenger for the October show. So there is that. I really don't know.
You know, we mentioned another show, and since you brought that up, I mean, since you really don't know what's going on long-term a lot of the time, like,
yep,
you get to make decisions sometimes about your matches. In that match, in the Best of Three Falls match, when Ibushi's out there with the towel, which obviously played into past storylines. I mean, totally on you guys? I mean, you came up with that on your own, or was that something where it was recommended, you know, maybe someday we're going to do something, so grab that towel?
That was totally. I tossed it in as a red herring. I sort of looked at. I stumbled upon just someone's comments on my timeline, and people had said like, "Oh my God, like this is going to be Ibushi's moment for revenge from when he fought AJ." And I thought, wow, that's actually. I never considered that. Like, why would people consider that? We just got back together, and the more I read into it, the more people thought that Ibushi is going to use this opportunity to stab me in the back. So I thought, okay, I'm going to toss the towel in there, the white towel, as a red herring, and even almost create a moment where Ibushi gets up on the apron, much like he did, or much like I did against when Ibushi fought AJ, and just see where people's minds go with it. And if no one notices it, no big deal. But if people notice it right away, it adds another layer to the match. So that was by design, yes.
Okay, one more about the match, and I'll be done with this. So
Sure.
I could be... It's a long match. It may have happened and I forgot about it. But if I recall correctly, you guys fought and teased... It was like a one-winged angel or whatever through a table at ringside.
Yep.
And then at the end of the match, the table was never used.
That's
correct?
Right.
Okay, because I thought about that because... If you watch a WWE match, I don't want to I don't want to knock WWE matches, but like if guys are fighting for a table, at some point in the match, someone's going through that table. Like it almost never is a tease that leads to nothing.
Always, 100% of the time.
Yep, and I watched that match because I watched it a second time with my buddy, and the second time I saw you guys fighting on the table, and then I was just thinking, I don't think they ever go through that table. Like, this is a fight over a table that's never paid off here. Which, if this were real, you don't always go through the table. So I presume that was just another little thing by design.
Yep. Oh, it certainly was. Yeah. And it was kind of just a shot in the dark. Hey, let's try this. Like, do you think... I felt that the finishes, people... Again, like you said, there's this expectation where if you show a table... you have to use the table. And if you show that table and it hasn't been used yet, well, guess what? The finish isn't happening yet. And I wanted to sort of have people misled at every turn so that there was never really a moment where, okay, this is the finish for sure, or this is the finish for sure. We just wanted to add as many kind of tools in our chest to play with people's thoughts and emotions throughout this match, so that no one really knew exactly how it was going to go, even if you kind of knew it was going to go to a third fall.
But I mean, was there a concern? Because if in Money in the Bank, a ladder bridge was set up, okay?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter who's climbing. The end is not coming till that guy goes through that ladder. So was there any concern that by teasing the table, you'd be going for the big stuff at the end of the third fall, and you might have viewers going, well, they haven't gone through that table yet, so none of these could possibly be the finish?
I don't think, because of Japan's very different, so I don't think that you would have that mentality of it can't be the finish.
Well, they didn't. But I'm just wondering if there was any concern.
Yeah.
And I never heard that as sort of a criticism of the match either.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just wondering if that ran through your mind.
No, not at all. I'm just saying, like, I'm saying after the fact, no one ever said, like, hey, you dorks, you never used that table. My thought going through it was that there are stunts you could add to that match just to really hammer it home that we're doing everything possible to make this something really crazy and special. But sometimes in not doing things, it adds groundwork for the Okada Omega 5, which is bound to happen at some point. And I don't know, I really, in a way, and this might be a point of pride, but I didn't want to feel like we had to use a table in this match. I really wanted this story to be more cerebral. And just by showing that we tried to use it was more than enough.
Sure.
Yeah.
When you're going forward now that you're champion, I mean, when I look at there's a roster of incredible matches for you to have. I mean, is there anyone in particular where you go like, now that I'm champion, I want to do some sort of a championship match with this guy?
Yeah. I mean, for me right now, and it might sound strange because it's, we did do this match once before, but I feel like I could have a very good and different match with Tanahashi. Even though they've sort of groomed him to kind of step out of that top 4 spot, I really feel like I could tell something that could tug on people's heartstrings and just kind of give him the moment where, he's the everlasting ace, the eternal ace of New Japan. And that was always my hope, because I'd sort of still have regrets that we were never able to do that ladder match back when I was IC champion, and that was something that we were both really looking forward to. I mean, injuries happen; it is what it is. But at some point, I really wanted to revisit that. And even though he sort of, his match with Okada was somewhat of a torch passing moment, again, a re-torch passing moment. I would love at some point to build towards that as well, and I think it would be a different story from Okada Tanahashi, and of course very different than an Omega Okada match as well.
All right, let's get some plugs in here for
real quick, because we'll get killed if we don't ask this question.
Sure.
Obviously, every year in January is the same question, and this year with the Young Bucks contract being up at the end of the year.
Yeah.
You know where we're going, because
I think I might know where this is going.
I know the answer.
Yeah, because as you know, I'm sure that seriously, there is not a day that goes by where I'm not asked at least 5 times. So what's going to happen? And I always give the same answer, that it's June. Actually, I used to say May, but now it's June. And right. I actually was in my mind like, I'm not even going to bother with even asking any of these guys till September, because this is a very quickly changing wrestling landscape, and
it really is. Yeah,
where their minds are, where your mind is today, may not be where it is in September, and may not be where it is in December. But
I'll be honest. My mind was in a very different place before the Okada match, and before the Okada match, we changed presidents, and we have a new dude who is going to kind of take over, and he has a complete different vision as to how things should be. And just having, speaking with him over dinner got me really excited for things moving forward, and I like the ideas that he has. And, being able to speak with him, my time with him was very brief, but...
what's your thoughts on Harold?
He's a very successful man, and he has a history of being able to generate a lot of money. And I don't know if he's actually mentioned this in interviews or not, but when we sat down for dinner, he had mentioned that one of the first matches that he'd ever seen was my actual Best of 3 Falls match with Kota Ibushi in 2008, and that's what made him a fan.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So, just because of that, he sort of has always had just sort of a vested interest in wrestling. He's kind of been following it behind the scenes while he's been working with other companies and other jobs. And he's always sort of respected my path in wrestling and really respects my creative input, which is, much different than, the previous president. Not that we had a bad relationship or anything, it's just that he had his way of doing things, and, I didn't really have that open channel to him. So this is a very new situation where, I actually have an opportunity to kind of work closely with the president, and I've never had that opportunity before. And if I have ideas or feedback or any sort of weird, strange thing that I'm thinking in my mind, I can actually easily and freely reach out to him, and he'll take my call. So, again, like, there hasn't been any offer from any side. Like, I haven't had to sit down with New Japan about re-signing. I haven't had to sit down with, Ring of Honor or TNA or WWE about, signing with them. And I generally don't like to even think about stuff like that until after the G1, because that's really the most grueling series that I'm going to do, and I have to try to keep mentally stable for all that stuff. I don't want any sort of outside influences messing up my mojo. So that's probably something that I would revisit after all that's done. But again, I really like the direction the company's going to be going in from here. And But I mean, yeah, all our contracts are up, and I can't say I have 100% decided on anything. But yeah, it's just like you said, it's just too soon right now. Too soon.
Yeah.
All right, this Daytona show and Twitter and anything else you'd like to get out there.
Cow Palace, July 7th.
I mean, I would love to kind of push for the Daytona show. So that's if you guys want information towards that, it's all at ceogaming.org. You know, if you're in the area, show up live. It'll be a very fun time. And if not, it's going to be streamed on Twitch, so that'll be fun as well. And all that information is going to be on the website. So again, that's ceogaming.org. My social media stuff is just Kenny Omega Man X at Twitter. I don't do Instagram or really Facebook or anything, so Twitter is probably where I'm only active at. So if you could give me a follow there, it'd be great. And yeah, New Japan. That's we have some big stuff coming up there. The show at the Cow Palace on July 7th. And if you can't be there live, you can catch that show on Access TV, right? I believe.
Yes,
and
Access
New
TV
Japan
Live.
Pro Wrestling World.
That's right,
Yeah.
njpwworld.com.
And also, the match that we've talked about with Okada will air on July the 6th on Access, and then will be repeated
that's
on...
right, yep.
It'll air on July, and it will be repeated on July the 7th as the lead-in. So the show starts at 8 o'clock. So at about 6 to 6:30, the entire match in its entirety. And I mean, the thing that also is amazing to me, because this is kind of daunting, okay, in the sense of watching the thing back, to get the whole picture of the Omega Okada match, the last one, you almost have to start with the video before the ring entrance and through the post-match interview at the end. And that is a performance that is an hour and 45 minutes total time. I mean, which is amazing. It doesn't feel like an hour and 45 minutes, but essentially it was like it was in many ways like watching like a movie with the beginning, a build, a climax, and then whatever it is, a postscript.
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly sort of this style that I'm trying to kind of push forward with. That's exactly what it is. I want everything that I do to resemble more like a movie or like an episode of television, not a basic 4-step wrestling match that everyone is kind of hammered in, on their training day. Like, this is how you wrestle. This is how you wrestle. And I think people get lost in that because they are fans that get into wrestling, and they're fans for life, and so they look like they're fans when they're wrestling. And I just think that wrestling can be anything. And at the end of the day, the most important thing it should be is entertaining. So what's entertaining to me? Well, I love watching a good television drama. I love watching a good movie. And thus, I try to structure my matches as such.
Well, on that note, we got to wrap it up. Kenny, I want to thank you so much for doing the show here today. And, of course, check out at Kenny Omega Man X on Twitter for all of the information on everything. And we are out of here. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again after a while.
Thanks, guys.